One of our followers on social media just asked us the question, so do different material and say resistor or capacitors matter in power supplies? Well, yes, absolutely. They matter. Everything, not only the material that matters in those passive components, but also their placement, on what they're placed on, their phasing, their harmonic match, how they react in combination with each other. Everything matters. These are power supplies. Power supplies, that's where basically the energy and the music itself almost originates, apart from the recording. When we reproduce music, everything starts with power supplies. This makes a difference between great sounding product or average, mediocre sounding product. We are very meticulous when it comes to power supply designs, because should we place a wrong material or phase it incorrectly, then the result can be devastating on the overall effect, how everything is going to sound. That's the most paramount, the most important part. And that's where most companies are saving. That's why you can see and look inside our products and inside our chassis, and just count how many large, bulky transformers are inside, and what type of core and materials and the windings and the bobbins everywhere around being used. We don't save cost because we strongly believe that this is where the energy in the music is originating. The power supply, and obviously every material that goes inside the power supplies, is the core, is the foundation of sound. It's not just the quantity, how bulky they look. The power supplies, the transformers, for example. The transformers, the cores, have to be substantial in order to be able to handle the currents that exist in the circuit. So they have to be bulky and larger in their cores. The other aspect is, obviously, it's not the quantity, it's also the quality of those cores, for example. So we're talking about now the material quality inside the transformers. So most of the transformers are made from silicon steel. There's generally two different types of silicon steel. One is called grain-oriented, and the other is not grain-oriented. So non-grain oriented is the most cheapest, it's widely available. It is used by most manufacturers inside the toroidal transformers. It is plentiful and it's the lowest cost. It doesn't saturate that quickly, it can take plenty of current, and it's the most used material there is. So non-grain oriented silicon steel. Our transformers, on contrary, as of now, using the M6 silicon steel material, which is known as grain-oriented silicon steel. This is one of the more permeable silicon steel materials. It is characterized by its additional clarity. So it's a higher grade silicon steel. It's grain-oriented. It has an incredible characteristic when it comes to sound. Silicon steel that is not grain-oriented, that is the cheaper one, it's like a dirty glass. In direct comparison to a silicon steel that is grain-oriented, like the M6, this is a clearer glass. It's very clear. So the transparency between grain-oriented and non-grain-oriented steel is like night and day. M6 silicon steel is basically our starting point for the cores in our transformers. And normally the M6 is being used in the signal output transformers. In our case, we already use the M6 in our mains transformers. So our power transformers use the higher quality silicon steel material, which is normally reserved for signal type of transformers. We use them in our mains transformers for the reason that this material is simply superior to the normal non-grain oriented one. So somebody is going to say, well, but Slava, that's just a mains transformer. Why should it matter? It matters so much because we did the R&D. We do check, we experiment. The grain-oriented silicon steel is so much superior in passing light and transparency. It's a much clearer sounding material. And that translates itself into more clarity with higher resolution, more low-level musical information that we didn't have. In our higher-end products, we even use the super high-B variant of the silicon steel, which is the highest grade of the grain-oriented silicon steel that is normally reserved only for the highest grade of signal output transformers. We use this material in the mains transformer. Why? Well, we are looking to have the best. We're looking to achieve the highest performance. It costs, but it's impossible to achieve the same sound quality with the non-grain oriented, the cheapest steel there is. If one sums up every power supply everywhere, using this, we achieve a superior transparency, and we can uncover musical clues that is impossible to uncover with non-grain oriented type of steel used in the mains transformers. So if the core of the transformers in the mains, in the power supplies matter so much, then you can bet that the wire, the bobbin, the nuts, the bolts, the fixings, the frames, the shrouds, whatever the transformer is made of, going to make a difference. Now, obviously, whatever I just said, what applies to mains transformers applies even more so to the signal transformers. Signal transformers, well, you have a signal flowing through them, just like it goes through the power supplies. It doesn't stop there, it's a circuit. So somebody thinks that, well, it's not in the signal path, something. Isn't it part of the same circuit? So it must be in the signal path. Everything is in the signal path, at least at S1X audio design. So our windings, primary, secondary windings in the signal transformers, obviously are heavily affected by the material that is used in the conductor. Not all coppers are created equally. Different coppers sound differently. The same applies to silver. Though they share a common characteristic, they are not created equally. So we specifically choose the copper material, and we choose specifically the silver material for signal transformers. Some of our signal transformers are wound that they have copper primary and copper secondary. That's our standard or the special versions. Then we have the classic versions where we use silver on the secondary and copper on the primary. And then we have fully silver wound primary and secondary, which are called the signature versions, which have nothing but silver as a conductor material. The silver, the copper, whatever material alloy one is using in the conductors matters because it affects the sound of a signal transformer. It matters in the transformers, whether mains transformers, whether they are signal transformers, whether they are chokes, whether they're filtering chokes, whether they are plate chokes, whatever type of inductors, the material matters because it is directly affecting the sound.